You see, to the world, she was just a quiet woman in the kitchen, someone who had simply accepted her terrible fate. But for 15 long years, Rachel Moore was secretly forging a weapon of perfect, patient, and absolutely devastating revenge. This is the incredible true story of how one enslaved woman delivered her own brand of justice to 7 powerful men when the law refused to.
So let's set the scene. It's the summer of 1858 in Adams County, Mississippi. And suddenly, a strange wave of death just sweeps through the area. 7 prominent, powerful white men, all connected by a dark secret, die within a matter of weeks. On the surface, the deaths seemed random, tragic, just bad luck. But they were anything but. They were actually the final act in a meticulously planned vendetta.
I mean, look at this list. The official causes of death were just so normal, so depressingly mundane. Lung fever, a snake bite, cholera. These were common tragedies back then. So of course, no one saw a pattern. Nobody connected the dots. And that was exactly what the architect of these deaths had been counting on. To really understand why, we've got to go back 15 years. Okay, so the year is 1843. The seed for this incredible revenge, the whole motive, was planted by a single, brutal act of injustice. An act that decided a prize-winning pig was worth more than a young man's life.
I want you to meet Caleb. He was Rachel's little brother, and he was the one person she let herself love completely in the cruel, harsh world of the Riverside plantation. He was bright, he was gifted, and at just 17, he was already a promising blacksmith. But then, one morning, the master's prize boar goes missing, and Caleb is framed by another enslaved man who was jealous of his skills. The evidence was planted, the lie was told, and the merciless gears of a crooked system started to turn.
What happened next wasn't justice, it was a horrifying parody of it. The so-called trial took less than an hour. The overseer testified against him, the sheriff chimed in about suspicious behavior, and the judge just went along with it. No one was allowed to speak up for Caleb, and the all-white jury, they came back with a guilty verdict in under 10 minutes. The sentence was death by hanging.
And if that wasn't horrific enough, the execution itself was completely botched. The rope was too long, the drop was too short. Caleb didn't die instantly. For 9 excruciating minutes, he strangled to death, convulsing on the gallows, while the white crowd mocked and jeered at him. 9 minutes. And Rachel was forced to watch every single second of it.
This was the moment everything changed. As Rachel stood there watching her brother die, something inside her didn't just break, it was reformed. It was forged into something like iron. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she just watched. And she memorized every single face. The master, the overseer, the sheriff, the judge, and every last juror. A vow took root in her soul. They would all pay. She would just wait.
And so, the long wait began. 15 years of silence, of patience, and of meticulous, careful preparation. She took the very thing that was meant to oppress her, the fact that to them she was less than human, just background noise, and she turned it into her greatest weapon.
You know, in their eyes, Rachel was just part of the furniture, an aging, obedient slave who knew her place. They had absolutely no idea they were living side by side with a brilliant pharmacologist and a cold, calculating executioner who was cataloging their every weakness, their every fear, their every routine. Her plan, of course, required knowledge, so she started by secretly learning to read, a crime that was punishable by whipping. She then devoured medical books from the plantation library, studying chemistry and botany. The still room, where they made medicines and preserves, became her secret laboratory. She grew foxglove, water hemlock, castor beans right under their noses, experimenting with dosages on rats until she became an absolute expert in the art of poison. After 15 long years, in the summer of 1858, her moment finally came. And her plan wasn't just about killing, oh no. It was about delivering a unique, poetic kind of justice to each man, one perfectly tailored to his specific sins. The artistry of her revenge is just stunning. Master Powhatan, who relied on a daily health tonic, died a slow death as Rachel carefully replaced it with a version laced with foxglove. Overseer Crenshaw, who had a hysterical fear of snakes, was killed by 6 venomous water moccasins she caught and released in the cotton gin. And Judge Blackwood, a superstitious man with a weak heart, he died of a fear-induced heart attack after she staged a haunting right outside his bedroom window.
But for Sheriff Winthrop, the man who personally put the noose around Caleb's neck, Rachel designed a special fate. She cooked up a batch of her delicious fig preserves, but this one was laced with arsenic. Then, through some brilliant social engineering, she got the jar gifted from the master's wife to the sheriff's own landlady, who then proudly gave it to him. He died weeks later from what everybody just assumed was a bad case of cholera.
The jurors who sealed Caleb's fate were next. One was slowly driven mad and died of dehydration after she served him mercury-laced coffee over several visits. Another, a predator who preyed on young enslaved girls, was lured to an abandoned cabin, beaten with a skillet, and forced to drink a potent poison. And the final juror? He was dispatched with a fast-acting mixture in a glass of whiskey at a crowded tavern.
7 men. Every single person who was directly responsible for her brother's death was now dead. Rachel's 15-year promise to Caleb had finally and completely been fulfilled.
And she got away with it. Completely. No one ever connected the deaths. And you have to ask why? Because the racism of the time made it literally impossible for them to even imagine that an enslaved black woman could possess the intelligence, the patience, and the sheer will to pull off such a complex and flawless campaign. Her supposed inferiority was her ultimate shield.
Now, Rachel's story could have just died with her, right? It could have been another secret buried by history. But the end of the Civil War brought freedom, and with that freedom came the chance for her incredible story to finally be heard. So, 5 years after her revenge was complete, Union troops occupy Mississippi. And now free Rachel Moore makes her way to a Union camp, and she tells her entire story to a chaplain named Reverend Thomas. He documented every word of her testimony, preserving this unbelievable act of resistance for all of us.
The chaplain, who was probably just fascinated and horrified, asked Rachel if she felt any guilt at all for the 7 deaths. Her response was chilling, and it was absolute. She said her only regret was that she was not being able to kill more of them because 7 deaths weren't nearly enough to pay for the crime of slavery.
And this really gets to the core of her story, doesn't it? By the letter of the law, Rachel was a serial murderer, no question. But in a system where the law itself was a tool of oppression and murder, was she not an executioner delivering a form of justice that the courts would never ever provide?
Her actions force us to look past simple labels. They challenge our modern ideas of what's right and what's wrong, and they make us ask these deeply uncomfortable questions. What is justice? What is vengeance? And what is the right thing to do when the legal path is specifically designed to deny your humanity?
And that's the question her legacy really leaves us with. When a system is fundamentally broken, when it protects the powerful and crushes the innocent, who has the right to deliver justice? Rachel Moore gave her answer. And it's up to us to grapple with what that really means.